Suprabhatam and Sadar Pranam to all in this audience. And what a enlightening session we had in the morning today by Nandakumar sir. So much of it is covered for Akhand Bharat. So I'm a cultural heritage person. I work with INTAC and ICOMOS and cultural heritage, which we know is very little actually. And let me quickly take 3-4 minutes to explain you what cultural heritage is all about. It comprises of many elements: the built heritage, the manuscripts, the coins, the natural heritage, the temples, forts, or even the skill sets of the artists or the skill sets of the dancers. Basically tangible and intangible heritage both. Now we are talking of Akhand Bharat, and before we moving on to the scriptures and fictions, let me give you a little bit of insight into the impact of scriptures on cultural heritage from a different mindset, from an archaeologist's mindset, because my area is primarily archaeology and epigraphy. So in the early 1980s and early 1990s, when Professor Emeritus Dr. S.R. Rao, the father of marine archaeology in India, started working on the excavation of Dwarka. He primarily started, and why I'm sharing this you will understand now, he primarily started working on the excavation based on 4 of our scriptures. The Harivamsha, he referred to the Vishnu Parva of Harivamsha. Then of course Mahabharata, where he referred to the Sabha Parva and the Mausal Parva. Then he referred Vishnu Puran and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why he did that? Because he wanted to narrow down on the exact locations before to start the excavations. So obviously he tried to identify the Mula Dwarka, the Bet Dwarka, and the shoreline of Bet Dwarka. And I don't know if anybody has gone through his works or not. It is one of my research areas, so I'll tell you 2 things from there. One, his final works, he mentioned that only Krishna's Dwarka, the tagline, is missing. And why he said that, when you look at his works and findings, the archaeological findings, and I've been fortunate to visit some of the archaeological findings of Dr. Rao, and I want to share with all of you, if any of you ever visit Kurukshetra, please go and visit the Sri Krishna Panorama Museum. You have 4,000-year-old stone anchors, triangle-shaped stone anchors recovered by Dr. Rao from the Dwarka excavations, kept in that museum. And you should see it, 3000 BC, 3500 BC stone anchors. So coming back to the findings, why he said that? Because, what he discovered, the excavations, during the excavation, the walls, Dwarka means a walled city. It was built from the 12 yojan of reclaimed land, which was earlier known as Kusasthali. So the walls of Dwarka findings, the archaeological findings, exactly matched with the descriptions mentioned in Harivamsha and Mahabharata. The mechanized walls. Then he also found Harappan seals, which had animals imprinted on them. And these seals not only were found in Dwarka and Lothal, but right up to Kalinga. And that takes us to the maritime trade, which is also one of our cultural heritage. Maritime trade of Kalinga, maritime trade of the Cholas, and maritime trade on the western sector in Dwarka and Lothal, which were the key port cities. So these coins and the walled cities convey a lot of impact even today on archaeological excavations that are being carried out. They are one of the key reference points, is what I'm trying to say. It's just not about from a religious perspective, but even from an archaeological perspective as well. A similar methodology was adopted by Dr. B.B. Lal when he excavated the mounds of Hastinapur, Varnavrat, and Draupadi mound in Meerut area. Coming back to the the Kalingan trade, which I was referring to, Kautilya's Arthashastra, I'm just trying to address it from an Akhand Bharat perspective. Kautilya's Arthashastra clearly defines for the Mauryas, of course he wrote it for Chandragupta Maurya, but it clearly defines that what should be the process, policies, do's and don'ts, the golden rules of a maritime trade and maritime operations. And that is why the Mauryans had a complete monopoly in the eastern sector as long as they were there. And in that, he defines two things, which is even practiced today. How? One is, he defines the position of a Navadaksha, which is a minister for shipping. And we have a transportation ministry today even available, which acts as an apex body to all the transportation sector. Then he also defines the process on how shipping should be done. Shipping operations, maritime trade should be done by formation of a shipping guild, liner cartel, and we have the shipping line cartels even today. So you see Akhanda Bharat, where the scriptures follow and how even today, knowingly or unknowingly, we are still following it today. The third point that I want to make is my findings, similarity from Kalingan maritime trade, the Chola maritime trade and the maritime trade of the western sector in Lothal and Dwarka, are the usage of a trained bird which is called Disa Kaka. Disa means direction, Kaka means bird. A category of, a breed of specialized birds which were trained to find the shores, by the Cholas, by the Kalingans, and also by the Yadavas. This process or this technology of using these birds was available in the entire peninsula on the entire coastline of Bharat. And this is a very common practice which was there, And later on this was replicated to some extent by using pigeons for, sending messages and all that. So all in all, you see the similarities in terms of archaeological findings, epigraphic findings, processes, documents that integrate towards Akhanda Bharat. The third point that I would like to share with all of you is, if anybody of you have visited the Hathigumpha caves, Udaygiri caves in Bhubaneswar, it has the Hathigumpha inscription by the legendary Kalingan ruler Mahamegha Vahana Aira Kharavela. He was a Jain king who fought against the Nandas, and he speaks in the Hathigumpha inscription about the concept of Akhanda Bharat. The 13 years of his regnal reign, defines of the various activities, and there he mentions about the concept of Akhanda Bharat. So this is one, and lastly, in the interest of time, I will give you a fourth anecdote, is from Brajmandal, Vrindavan, Mathura, Gokul. You see, from a scriptural perspective, everybody of you are aware of the parikramas that we do, right? Where did this parikrama come from? The earliest parikrama was in Brajmandal, and from Brajmandal the concept of parikrama slowly percolated in different parts of India. That is the earliest parikrama which is found and mentioned in the Garga Samhita, in the Brahma Vaivarta Puran, in Harivamsha, and in Srimad Bhagavatam. The first parikrama typically was done by Uddhav Maharaj, the creator of Uddhav Gita, when he tries to do a circumambulation of the entire Brajmandal as per instruction of Krishna and the Gopikas to attain the Prema Bhakti. The second one, which is a part of the major resurrection of Vraj, was done by none other than the great grandson of Sri Krishna, Maharaj Vajranav, under the impetus, guidance and patronage of Maharaj Parikshit, guided by their Kulguru Maharshi Shandilya, when they were trying to resurrect the entire Vrajmandal. And that is the time when various Krishna deities were sculpted by Maharaj Vajranav himself. One of them is still alive, and you can see when you are there in Jaipur Govind Dev Ji. So that's a 5,000-year-old deity. So with this, I will now get into our main topic of discussion. And my first question would be to Abhinav Ji. Abhinav Ji, we are talking of the fictions based on our scriptures. So my first question to you is, what exactly do we fictionalize? An event, a character, episode, or a particular battle? What is that we do over here?
Thank you, Suryaji. Can I skip that question by saying it's an out of syllabus question? No, let's not do that. So the reason why there is so much of writing on our epics, right? And by epics, I'm specifically referring to the Puranas and the Itihasa, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The reason why there is so much of writing on this is because these are stories that appeal to us, right? Oh, okay. My voice has become deeper now. So these stories appeal to us at many different levels across ages, across generations and all. So that is why people want to write on these epics. Your question is, what do we fictionalize, right? Because if I'm just telling the same story, then what am I doing new? We already have the original epics to go to. So what is it that we fictionalize? You can fictionalize a character. You can create new characters. You can fictionalize an episode. And when it comes to fictionalizing characters, unfortunately, that is the easiest thing to do. Characters and episodes. And I'll touch upon a couple of controversial topics. For example, Draupadi, Yagnaseni, Panchali. At her Swayamvar, she rejects Karn because Karn is a Suta. What have you done here? You have fictionalized Draupadi. You have fictionalized an episode. You have misrepresented it. You have distorted it. To what end? Did that happen? No. If you read the Mahabharata, Karna actually steps up. He attempts to pierce the target according to the rules set by Dhrishtadyumna, and he fails. Just so we are clear, Karna took part in the Swayamvar and he failed. Draupadi never stopped him. Why do we then want to believe that the Draupadi did something like that? Isn't it a disservice to Draupadi by making her, some sort of a person who indulges in discrimination? Why do we make a superhero out of Karna? Karna was no doubt a great character, but let us also be honest about his failings, his shortcomings. On the other hand, if you look at the Varnavath episode, that is such a fascinating episode, right? You have the makings of a conspiracy that, modern crime thrillers would be proud of. Can you create a story that is set around that event, that episode? Can you create new characters that are set in that universe? Today, that is called as world building. Lord of the Rings did that, and Game of Thrones did that. You create a full world, you create characters in it. Can you at least, as a writer, as a fiction writer, can you at least do that? Wouldn't that be a better use of your originality, of your talents, rather than taking the easy way out by saying, okay, Karna was a hero, Arjun was a villain, Bhishma did something bad to Shakuni, that's why Shakuni had this lifelong, thirst for revenge. Isn't that taking the easy way out? Okay, I will imagine, I won't read the Mahabharata, I will imagine characters according to my own prejudices. I will project my own insecurities, my own feelings of whatever you might call them, inadequacy, and project them onto the characters of the Mahabharata. Isn't that a disservice? Can you at least be honest about it by saying that, this is not in the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Karna actually runs away from battle. Not once, but several times. But I like Karna, so I am imagining Karna to be a hero. Authors don't write that. So what do you fictionalize? One last example is when you have Shakuntala, which is actually the very first Upakhyan of the Mahabharata. What happens when Shakuntala goes to Dushyant and says that this is your son Sarvadaman, or as he came to be known as Bharat, recognize him, adopt him, and make him the crown prince, and Dushyant refuses. Now, according to the Kalidas version, it's a very docile Shakuntala who goes to Dushyant's court, and it is the contrivance of that ring that actually causes Dushyant to recognize Shakuntala. That was Kalidas's creative interpretation. But what does the original Mahabharata tell us? Shakuntala was a fiery woman. I mean, here is a person who is Vishwamitra's daughter. Now, you can say anything about Vishwamitra, but he was not a docile sage. And his daughter, you are saying, is going to be that meek, submissive woman. No, the Mahabharata tells us when Dushyant says, I don't recognize you, and he says, whoever can come and claim to be my wife and present her child as my son, who are you, woman? Shakuntala basically tells him, who are you to talk to me like this? If you want to compare status, this is what Shakuntala says. My status is like that of a mountain. You are like a bilwa seed in front of me. And if we do these kinds of misinterpretations by projecting characters the way they were not, we also do a disservice to our entire faith and culture. Women in India always had a lot of agency, independence, and we somehow we distort them to conform to Western stereotypes of what women are supposed to be. We are indulging in the worst form of colonialism. We are doing the colonials' job better than they could. I don't know if that answers your question. I went off on a rant, but I thought I was in Arnab's studio for a minute, so I could.
It's okay. That was good. Okay. So, Ami, coming to you, your books on Ramayana and Mahabharata is now across everywhere. And you have covered the length and breadth of Akhanda Bharat also, in that sense. My question around this is a very unique one. Sri Rama, during his exile, traveled pan-India before he reached to Samudra Manthan. Similarly, the Pandavas during their exile traveled all across India, and today various folklore legends, temples, deities speak of their presence pan-India, Just a small example, in Puri's Jagannath temple, the presiding deity or the protector of the treasury is Sri Loknath Mahadev. Loknath is the embodiment of Bhimsen, and Loknath was actually consecrated by Sri Rama when he was on his exile. He went to the Sabarpalli, did not find a lingam. The local suburbs, the tribals, gave him a loki, bottle gourd. From there he built a lingam, which came to be known as Lokinath, and over time it became Loknath. So there are so many of that. Now, all across this, how do you see the Aryan-Dravidian divide that has been pushed into the narratives for years together now, and we are kind of trying to project and share the Akhand Bharat with all those references from across all corners? How do you see it developing, and how you can address this?
Namaste, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Jai Shri Ram.
Ab thoda sa lag raha hai. There should be some energy while we are talking about these topics, right? So first of all, thank you so much, Chennai Litfest, for having me here. Thank you so much, Surya da. And always a pleasure to be here with my senior Abhinav ji. One correction, before I give the answer, one correction I want to do to the introduction that is made. I do not write fiction. In fact, what I do is debunk fiction. So the books I have written are, at least I like to claim it, I've tried to keep my assessments to minimum and state or share what Ved Vyas ji or Valmiki ji would have said. Now, not to say to look down upon fiction, because I think fiction has its place and it's very, very important. I don't think I have the caliber to write fiction. I think that also requires some real talent. I probably don't have that. So not looking down upon fiction. You mentioned something very interesting, Surya, that there are so many stories around the epics themselves, right? So many temples find their origins to some story in Ramayana and Mahabharata. And you asked Abhinav a very important question: what do you fictionalize? Now, interestingly, a lot of these stories about temples, about connections, vagere, vagere, actually don't exist in Mahabharata or Ramayana, Vedvyasji's Mahabharata or Valmikiji's Ramayana. Then how do we make sense of this? In fact, in the talk before this, Nanda Kumarji said something very interesting. He said that Rukminiji was actually from Arunachal, whereas people in Maharashtra think she's from Vidarbha. She can't be from everywhere and anywhere, right? Similarly, you have Hidimba temple in the northeast, but you also have Hidimba temple in Himachal. And they all think, ye to hamari hai, she is coming from here. How do we make sense of this? Which means something is true, something is not. Right? Now, does that mean that we discard all that is wrong? Actually, no. There is a beauty in the way Indian Sahitya has evolved over time. Right? And the connections, be it in Valmiki Ramayana, be it not be in Vedvyasji's Mahabharata, doesn't matter. The connections actually tell us that the epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, which are our itihas, very much our itihas, the way they have bound Bharat Varsha together, that everybody wants to be a part of it. Unlike today, when certain parts say, no, we are not your Aryans, yeah, we are somebody else, right? Today, we are becoming more reductive. We are trying to break away from that narrative. Whereas then, the narrative was to associate yourself with those stories, right? And get legitimacy for whatever stories you have. Now, all these stories had a lot of bhava, shraddha in them. The idea was not to break. The idea was to make and keep together. Should such creative liberty be allowed? Absolutely, right? I'll give you another example. The Kevat Prasanga does not come in Valmikiji's Ramayana, but it comes in Tulsidas-ji's, and it is a beautiful prasanga, right? It shows how much inclusive a Raja Sriram was. It is a story that connects, it doesn't break. Those stories are also important. Fictionalizing some of them is perfectly okay. But then where does it get tricky? Lot of examples Abhinavji already gave, the Draupadi example, the Karna example, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But also to tell you, this is not a current thing, huh? Lot of you must have heard that shloka. Suto va suta putro va yova kova bhavami aham devayatan janmakule madayatam tu paurusham. And every time people talk about Karna, they'll also chant this shloka. He's saying, let me be Suta, let me be a Sutputra. How does it matter? It is not in my hands. The Bhagwan decides the Kula, but it is my Paurusham, it is my Parakram that decides who I am, right? And we get super charged up by these things. Now, this is not a recent shloka. No. It goes back 2000 years. Written in a play by Bana Bhatta Narayanji in Veni Samharam. So this creative liberty have happened then also, right? It has happened then also. Of course, the idea even in those would be little bit of creative liberty, which does not really change the character of the person themselves. But this has happened. We have allowed creative liberty. But where does it get tricky? When people start thinking that is the truth. There is a beautiful book, actually very beautifully written, and I know that a lot of dancers have used that story from fictionalized story of Ramayana to talk about Sita, or to talk about the women. And they show a prasanga where Shurpanakha and Sitama, they are sitting together. Okay. And both of them are sharing their pain. Now, this is actually a beautiful conceptualization of how women bond, how they share their issues. But you know where it gets tricky? You know who they are bitching about? Who they are bitching about? What do you think? Who should they ideally be bitching about? Shurpanakha's husband was killed by Ravan. Yeah? Shurpanakha was made widow by Ravan. The whole problem of Shurpanakha was because her husband was killed. She is the one who lies to Ravan, saying that the Sita is very beautiful, she is worthy of your wife. Tava bharya anurupa, so go get her. Yeah? She is not saying this is for my nose and yours, you are my brother, take my revenge. No. She is gaming Ravan. Why? Because she knows how lusty he is, right? But instead of him, these two ladies are bitching about Sriram. Imagine. Now, yes, you could have taken a creative liberty here. You could have made those two girls, women, express their pain. but not in a way like, why were the ears and nose of Shurpanakha cut to begin with? Because she tried to attack Sita Ma, right? She tried to kill her. And now imagine Sita Ma, and they are cribbing, arere, see, Shurpanakha is saying, see what your husband did to me, see he also left you, and Sita Ma is bewkoof kya? She doesn't understand that he saved me. But these things become so popular, and we love victimhood. What is wrong with us women? We love to be victimized. Bhad, 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 bhad. Asus will come and we will like, wow, 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 wow. Kya likha hai? I see myself in her. All that will happen. Yeah. Now this is how we are gamed, using our own epics, and the narratives are changed. Now coming back to your question, yeah, because this is all sort of tied together. What kind of fiction can be great and allowed, and where is it where we as readers need to be very, very aware? There's a fiction written about Ramayana, and they say Ramayana is no more about Dharma Yuddha. No. It is about an Aryan Ram coming and defeating a Dravidian Ravan. And so people here start thinking, no, our man is Ravan. Yeah, our man is Ravan. We are all his santati. Arey Baba, let's go back to what Valmiki ji has said about Arya Dravida. Let us see what he has said about Arya. To begin with, who is the father of Ravan? Vishrashrava. Rishi Vishrashrava. He is a Brahman Putra. That Valmiki ji doesn't say, so I will not make that but yeah, that is also one of the theories, right? Valmiki ji doesn't say where he was born. But the point is, he is a Brahman Putra, and the word Arya comes multiple times in Valmiki Ramayana, multiple times. Anarya also comes multiple times. Yeah, how and where does it come? I'll show you, I'll tell you. So Kaushalya Ma is called Arya. Kekai is called Anarya, Arya both, but also Anarya. Why? Because she makes such, outrageous demands of Ramasya Aranyagamanam, Bharatasya Abhishechanam, and all that she says. So she is called Anarya. Vali is called Arya by Mandodari. Sugriv is called Arya. When the Vanar Sena is running away because of Kumbhakaran's, they are scared of Kumbhakaran, Angad is telling them, don't be Anarya and run away. What will your family think of you? Stand here and fight. So Angad is also telling that Anaryas are the one who would run away, right? Mandodari is calling Ravan Arya. Ravan is calling Vibhishan Anarya. Why? Because Vibhishan is telling him what you are doing is wrong. Now so what does Ravan think of himself? He thinks of himself as an Arya only, right? So what does it tell us? One, Arya in our usage, parampara ke anusar, was never a racial shabda. It was not a race suchak shabda. But even if you imagine it to be a race suchak shabda, Sri Ram and Ravan consider themselves from the same race. Now, why is it that something that is so obviously given in our itihas is lost to us? Because we don't read our itihas. We try to learn our itihas from fiction. Now, as I said, fiction is not wrong, as long as there is discretion on the part of the readers. कि वो जो पढ़ रहे हैं, whatever they are reading is fiction. Perfectly okay. In fact, there is such beautiful fiction being written nowadays. Sai Swarupa ji, she's our friend, common friend, right? How beautifully she portrays the women in our itihas. And there is a lot of scope for imagination in these stories. But don't change the narrative head on, especially when the narrative is breaking us and creating a story of a past which was really bad. उसके कारण क्या होता है? I have like lot of times girls come up to me and they're like, "Ma'am, Shri Ram को पूजना क्यों चाहिए? Why should we even worship Shri Ram? See what he did to his wife, right?" That is one aspect. The other aspect is the whole Karna thing, the Jati thing. The women aspect. Women are always tortured. Abhinav already spoke about it, that what women were, and maybe we discuss further. But thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Amy. So I'll just take one last question for Abhinav ji. in the entire narrative of writing a fiction versus scriptures, in the originality of the events, Puranik Itihasa mentioned in the scriptures, what is that thin red line? Because Amy also very rightly mentioned on the narratives. What is that thin red line that we should be mindful of for the benefit of our audience, while reading?
Commerce cannot be that dividing line that if it makes money, it is right. If it doesn't make money, it is wrong. That is anartha. That is not dharma, it is anartha. But I grappled with it for some time and right or wrong or half right or half wrong. I came to the conclusion that it has to be a combination of, do you have the shraddha? Do you have the adhikar? If you are changing something, because there are people who will say that Goswami Tulsidas also changed elements in the Ramayana when he wrote the Ramcharitmanas, and my humble submission to you would be, do you have the same adhikar as Goswami Tulsidas or Kamban? Do you have the shraddha more importantly? You don't have to, people don't have to answer the question. Deep inside, they know the answer. And that is what comes out in all these different ways. To Ami's point, I would say that the alternate universe that you can create, Sai Swarupa is a wonderful example. Her book Rukmani, I would strongly encourage take a look at that. And if you want to take a look on derivative fiction, then the very first book, Abhinav, is a wonderful example of how you can create an entirely new original story that is set in the Puranic universe and do a good job of it. Gautam Chikarmane's book, The Tunnel of Varnavat, is another example that is set in the Mahabharata era. The principal characters of the Mahabharata play a sort of a role in the background, but it is an entirely new story and very well done. So, what is the red line? It has to be Shraddha and Adhikar. It cannot be Arth.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Abhinav ji. I think as Adi Sankara in his later years wrote a number of hymns and verses to foster bhakti in the hearts of men, creations of his Mahisasur Mardini, Ranganathashtakam, Jagannathashtakam, Bhajagoviddam, all these he realized, and when he wrote, he realized that knowledge, if it doesn't culminate into bhakti, then it is a useless tinsel. So now, before going to Ami with the last question, I'll just share one bit of information from an Akhanda Bharat perspective. There is this book called Yukti Kalpataru, written by Maharaj Bhoj of Gurjara Pratihara family in the 10th century. He was a king of Malwa, the ancient Malwa of Dhar, which we know as Dhar today. In this book, he defines how ships should be made. And in his book comes out the very information of the concept of stitched or sewn ships, which were prevalent at that time. But what we don't know, why he, propagated that idea. And he, sitting in the middle of Bharat, propagated and, advised this for Kalinga, for Cholas, for the western coast, when he did not have to do anything with the shipping. Because if you use nails in making the ships, there were magnetic rocks in the sea which used to pull down the ships. And that is from that perspective, he wrote Yukti Kalpataru, where he strongly advised building of stitched or sewn ships. We often come across Government of India's concept of making stitched ships in the Kalinga sector with the help of Indian Navy. But what is important for all of you to know is, it is the concept of sewn ships, where the stitching happens like this in a zigzag format. So with that, I will come to Ami with the last question for the session. Yaggaseni, often portrayed as Nihatta, Durbal, but I know personally, being an avatar of Mahamaya, how fearsome she was. And why don't you share some anecdotes, from the original Mahabharata, which portrays her CEO-like capabilities of marshalling multiple resources, of doing multitasking across the base for the Pandavas?
So Draupadi is one of my favorite topics. I love to speak about her. Unfortunately, the fiction around Draupadi is such which makes her, I mean, they always try to show her as a strong woman, but in what way? As a rebel who's fighting the society. Yeah? But does empowerment mean only fighting the society? Does it mean that unless you fight the society and break the norms, you can't be empowered? I think the whole idea of empowerment needs to change. What is empowerment? Empowerment means having agency, being trusted with responsibility, doing your kartavya. Why is that not empowerment? And in fact, that's the beauty of our epics of Itihas, Mahabharata and Ramayana. Every single woman character is so strong, not in the sense of always trying to break the norm. You don't have to. You can be a part of society building. You can be a part of Rajya building. And that is the role which Draupadi has played. Now, interestingly, all the fiction about Draupadi always talk only about some love angle with Karna. They will talk about how the Vastraharan happened, vagere, vagere, all of that. But you know, there's a beautiful prasanga in Mahabharata itself, which talks about what Draupadi was. In fact, every time Draupadi is spoken about, the woman leaves an impression, the way she talks. Be it her discussion in the Vastraharan during the Sabha. During the Sabha, when Dhritarashtra tells her that when Dhritarashtra is very scared because now Bhim has made all these oaths that he will kill, he will rip open Dushasan's heart and all that, and then there are these nimittas which are very bad. So when Dhritarashtra is now scared and he tells Draupadi, "Arey, no, you are my Putravadhu, you are like my daughter, I am giving back everything, you ask me Vardhan, I want to give you Vardhan." So first she says, "Please free my husband, my Yudhishthir, from becoming a slave, because I don't want my eldest son, Prativindhya, to become a slave, to be born to a slave father." Dhritarashtra says, "Okay." Then he says, "Ask more. I want to give you more." She says, "Okay, please free all my 4 brothers also, 4 husbands also, and let them get their shastras back." Okay. She could have asked for a lot more, but she says, "No, ensure that all my 5 husbands are free of dasatva and give them their shastra back." Dhritarashtra says, "Ask more." She says, No. As a Kshatrani, I am aware of what my adhikar is. I am allowed 2 Vardhans and I have asked that. Now, taking back Indraprastha is the kartavya of my husbands, and I have full faith in their purushartha, in their parakram. They will take it back. I don't need to do it for them. I'm happy with just this. Look at the character of this woman. Then when they are in Vanvas, it so happens that one day Shri Krishna and Satyabhama come to visit all of them. And the men get busy doing their gappa and they are talking and all of that. And Satyabhama and Draupadi get talking. Because the children, the 5 sons of Draupadi, they are spending their time in Dwarka as well as in Panchal. So she's asking about her sons and Satyabhama is answering and all of that. And then at one point, Satyabhama is like, "Draupadi, you have to tell me something. I have a question." And she's like, yeah, ask. She says, "How is it that your husbands, you have 5 husbands, Tava mukha preksha satatam pandavaha, these Pandavas are always looking at your face. How have you become your vashanugaha? How is it that you have completely controlled them? I have 1 husband, Krishna. Him also I cannot control. You've controlled 5. How is it that they're so much in love with you and they do everything that you ask them to?" And she says, "Is there a Vashikaran mantra? If you have a Vashikaran mantra, tell me, I'll use." And Draupadi says, No, Satya, there is no Vashikaran mantra, and don't even go that way. It will do more harm than good. But you are right. My husbands respect me a lot. Let me tell you why. And then there is this whole beautiful 3 sargas of Draupadi telling Satyabhama how she lived her life as the queen of Indraprastha, as the wife of the Pandavas. She talks about her role as the wife, so how she took care of their other wives, children, Kunti Ma, how she ensured that the Pandavas could always finish their Nitya Karma and all of that. Then she talks about her responsibilities for the Rajya and the Raj Mahal. There she says that we used to have lots of guests, like in lakhs, who would come to eat. And to serve those lakhs of guests, there were lakhs of servants, there were lakhs of thousands of maids and helpers. I knew all of them by name, she says. And I knew Krita Kritam, what was done, what was not done, what was pending, what was not pending. I knew if everybody had eaten, not eaten, but I also knew if the helpers and the maids had eaten or not eaten. I would wake up before everybody, I would sleep after everybody. So she says all of this, and I can keep talking about it, but two things I have to say. At one point, she says, Sarva Ragnyam Samudayam Ayam cha Vyayameva cha Aham Eka Aham Vedmi. Sarva Ragnyam Samudayam. The finances, the income of the entire Rajya. Ayam Vyayameva cha. What came and what went away, income and expenditure. Eka Aham Vedmi. I was the only one who knew it. I had complete transparency and insight into what we earned in Indraprastha, what was the expenditure. Then she says, Adrishyam Varunasyeva Nidhi Purnam Mahadudhim. So Nidhi is treasury. So she says, the treasury of Indraprastha, how was it? She's like, it was vast, like the ocean. Like the ocean has lots of ratnas. That's how our treasury was. Eka aham vedmi kosham. She says, I was the only one who knew what the treasury was. She says, if Yudhishthir had to go on a yatra, lakhs of ghodas and hathis and everything would go, lakhs of rathas would go. He would take with him lots of gifts. I was the one who managed all of this. Now imagine what kind of trust the Pandavas had on her, that she had complete insight into finances, which the even brothers did not have. And when will that kind of trust come? When she has proven her capabilities, when she has shown that she's trained enough and she can take care of that, right? That was Draupadi, and I say that all the time. She was almost like the CFO and COO of Indraprastha. And we think of her only as Vastraharan. Imagine. I'll say one last thing about Draupadi, because I think that prasanga is very rarely spoken about. In the end, all her sons get killed because of Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama goes. The sons are alive. This happens after the war has ended, right? The 5 sons get killed. And she's obviously upset and angry. And she says, I want revenge. So the brothers go, Bhim go, they all go, and they basically get the money out of Ashwatthama's head. We know all that. After they come back, she sees the money and she's quiet. And Bhim tells her, see, he's our guru's son, so we didn't kill him. Draupadi says, I completely understand. He's your guru's son. The way he's respectable to you, he's respectable to me. My sons deserved a revenge. They have gotten their revenge. Now I don't ask for anything more. The criminal has been punished. That makes me happy. I don't want anything more. And the lady goes back to resuming her task at the Maharani of Indraprastha once again, in spite of all her own pain. This is the grace and character of Draupadi. Do you even need fiction to appreciate this character? In fact, I think she's a role model for all women that we have here today. Yeah. So, thank you.
So with this, we'll open up the session. Only one question with the time that we have left. Any questions from the audience? Most welcome. I think Mr. Agarwal has a question. Can someone, a person from there?
You may have to come to the podium to ask a question.
Okay, I'll just help.
this is regarding fictionalization you told, but this is a creativity. The essence should not be changed. We have that thing, this right which is being given in Sanatan, that we can interpret the way we want. We can have multiple viewpoints. But this creative freedom, what is the type, why this narrative is not being portrayed across the spectrum? We do not need to change the essence. And this is, and the interpretation, the creative interpretation is available in Sanatan, which is not available in an Abrahamic religion. That is the blasphemous in that. So the fear psychosis has been created. The individual liberty of freedom in expression is available in Sanatan. I don't see that narrative actually going across. We need to create a yardstick rather than, we have to portray our narrative, our viewpoint, rather than speaking against Abrahamic religion or something like that. But we need to say that blasphemy is actually, the people have glamorized it like anything, the Western narrative. The individual creativity and freedom of expression is there. It comes with a responsibility. I totally agree with you, ma'am. The essence is
One last question. Can you just ask me?
So if you see Gita Press Valmiki Ramayana, if you see Bibek Debraji's translation and many other critical ones, Shambhukwat does exist in those versions. There are two schools of thoughts here. Some who will say Uttarkand, because Shambhukwat comes in Uttarkand, is not a part of Ramayana at all. It is Prakshipta. Okay, so if that is not a part of Ramayana at all, then Shambhukwat didn't happen. But there are traditional schools, because there are commentaries written on Shambhukwat, which say, no, this very much happened. Now the thing is this, is Shambhukwat, when people get super defensive about it, I would say, do we understand what has actually happened? Or are we just listening to that we are being told that it is Jativadi? Yeah? Or is there something more to it? So because we don't have time, I'll not get into the story per se. But what I've done in Ramayana Unraveled in my book is that I have put it as an epilogue. And I've tried to explain with multiple examples from Ramayana that even if we assume Shambhukwat is true, we really don't have to be defensive about it. It is actually Sri Ram upholding dharma and nothing at all. It is basically that. So sometimes we get defensive over something just because we don't know it. If we read the Itihas for what it is, we'll realize that it's not something we need to worry about.
So I think, okay, last question. Just make it short. No.
For the next program, we
so-
have kindly excuses.
You can take it off.
Thank you so much, the panelists, for giving us a beautiful insight into the scriptures and the stories and fictions around the scriptures. May I now request Sri Bharat Gopu to come and honor the guests here. And that was a wonderful way of putting across Shakuntala's bright, brilliant character and the explanation of Arya and Anarya. And to the women here, there was a beautiful message here. We were once ruling and we must miss the bus and better not miss it one more time and get on to it.